My Hero Academia Chapter 335 U.A Traitor confirmed? It looks like our theory that Hagakure is the U.A Traitor may be correct. Today we explain what her motives are, why she's helping All For One, and why she will eventually switch sides and become a true hero. Also, only a small percentage of the people who watch our videos are actually subscribed, so if you end up liking this video, consider subscribing. Please enjoy this video. Let's go! My Hero Academia Chapter 335 begins with All Might explaining that based on the analysis the Jets did in last chapter, they found out that Star and Stripe's quirk New Order became a kind of poison in Shigaraki's body while destroying an unknown number of quirks, and as mentioned later in this chapter, even damaged his quirk factor. Last time we saw Star and Stripe's remains manifesting in the quirk factor of New Order. She said that due to the fact that she was fighting all the other quirks, she was dying herself. This makes sense because she destroys the quirks by fighting them, so it's only normal that New Order will also be destroyed eventually, which was confirmed later in this chapter. Class 1A thinks that because of what happened to Shigaraki, they have the best chance to win now, especially because all civilians have been evacuated and all heroes are ready to attack. But All Might is smart. He seems to be the only one in the whole series who really understands the strategic genius behind All For One. He knows that every time it looks like things are good, it's only because All For One wants it that way. That's why All For One is by far one of the best villains in Shonen Jump. He's not too powerful, like he doesn't have some kind of god power, but he compensates for that with high intelligence and influence around the world. He's not your typical meathead villain who just walks right through the front door uncontrollably because he trusts his own power. He knows full well that over the years he has encountered many heroes who have been able to rival his strength, most recently even Star and Stripe. He's aware that strategy is much more important than pure strength, and All Might has seen through this way of thinking that All For One has. He knows that at this point it will be difficult to avoid a large-scale confrontation, especially because All For One is most likely prepared, and of course also most likely knows what is going on in the UA, which may even have been confirmed at the end of this chapter. All Might begins by mentioning the enemies: Shigaraki, All For One, Dabi, Toga, 6 near high-end Nomus, and of course the rest of the Paranormal Liberation Front, as well as all the other jailbreakers and villains who have joined the cause. The heroes on the other hand have lost almost half of their members, so things aren't looking so good if we are being honest. Everything will depend on the strongest heroes who will have to support Deku, who will have to awaken the full potential of One For All, and with it the last remaining quirk. But that depends on the second user and whether he cooperates with Deku or continues to play hard to get. However, I think there must be a reason why his quirk is kept secret for so long. Maybe the quirk itself will reveal a connection to Bakugo. Speaking of Bakugo, he mentioned something very interesting. Class 1A has been preparing for the final battle for a long time, and so he wants to test the strength of his new technique, Cluster. This deserves its own video of course, so hit the like button to show us your interest in this topic. But to keep it short for this review, a cluster has many definitions, but in terms of explosions, I only have 2 possibilities in mind. Atomic clusters, Bakugo could have learned to make them explode, similar to how the atomic bomb works. This would be extremely powerful as Bakugo would be able to create nuclear explosions. The second option is cluster munitions, a form of airdrop or sometimes ground-dropped explosives that contains or eject smaller sub-munitions. So basically Bakugo may have developed a technique where his explosions create many small, powerful sub-explosions, which reminds me a lot of the former possibility that he is able to explode atoms. So there may even be a connection to both options at the same time. But as I said, if you want we will do a more detailed video on this. You just have to destroy the like button like Bakugo will destroy All For One's potato face with a new cluster technique. Back to the villain lair where Shigaraki is still roaring in pain. All For One reveals that his quirk factor is damaged and they just have to wait a while for it to stabilize. It's pretty interesting that the quirk factor itself has been damaged, which is another indication that the transformation might be damaged as well, giving Shigaraki a better chance to fight the fusion. We must not forget that Shigaraki will most likely be saved by Deku at some point so that he will fight All For One in the final battle. This was already foreshadowed. All for One says that although preparations have been completed, he would like to wait a little longer. And now it gets interesting. All for One reveals that he likes to plan multiple routes to reach a final goal. He has spent decades designing new routes to cross the final line. Although Midoriya has returned to the well-secured UA, All for One has still many friends. As he says this, we see a light and Shigaraki's eyes seem to be drawn to it. His eyes travel a long distance until it stops at UA, where we see Hagakure. And now my partner Yami continues with the main topic of this video, Traitor Hagakure. Enjoy.
Could this be the confirmation of a theory about the U.A Traitor? We don't need to go over the theory again, it was all mentioned in the Hagakure Traitor video. We will include the link below. There, we explained in detail why she is 100% the traitor. Feel free to watch it after you finish this review. It is really an amazing theory, based on the way the chapter showed that scene along with the context of All for One saying he still has an advantage, even if Midoriya is in UA, along with the fact that we then saw Hagakure is a big indication that she may indeed be the long-awaited traitor. But what impact could Hagakure as a traitor have? We know that All for One has talked about the UA in terms of Deku and the security, so a traitor could potentially weaken security and allow the villains to attack. The UA shelter has all these underground tunnels that can be opened in the event of an attack to allow civilians and possibly even Deku to escape so that the villains are unable to follow them, as there are a variety of possible paths created to confuse the villains if they try to enter the escape system. A traitor within UA might have the ability to obtain the plans of this tunnel system, as happened at the beginning of My Hero Academia series, when the traitor most likely stole the staff plan and gave it to the villains, which allowed the villains to attack the USJ. Especially Toru Hagakure, who can easily turn completely invisible, could easily disable the sensors of the tunnels and even tell All for One the perfect path with which he could easily infiltrate UA without anyone noticing. However, the biggest question is not what damage Hagakure could do, but rather her motives for being a traitor. To answer this question, we must first understand that she most likely came to UA when she was already working for All for One. So she never intended to become a hero, but has always lied to everyone else. The concept of villains in My Hero Academia is always the same. It has this typical blueprint that is used for every single highlighted villain except All for One and Stain. But Stain is a completely different story. Normally in the world of My Hero Academia, the important villains are always treated badly by the society because of their quirks. They slowly started to distance themselves from other people because they were judged either because of their appearance or because of their behavior caused by the quirk factor. Toya, for example, always wanted to impress his father and was mistaken for someone he just couldn't be. And when that became clear, he was literally thrown away like a garbage bag. Toga was excluded from all social interactions because of a strange addiction to blood. She kept showing signs that she could become dangerous in the future if no one taught her how to behave properly with her blood addiction. She could have become a good person in society, perhaps even a very powerful hero, if only someone had shown her the way. But instead, people shunned her and made things worse. Twice was left completely alone with his mental illness, and Spinner was discriminated over and over again because of his appearance. All these bad guys could have been prevented if society had dealt with them differently, and instead of pushing them away, they should have been given a helping hand. The best example is Shigaraki, who was literally a small child running down the street in the middle of a big city, but no one tried to help him, which is the reason why his hatred for everyone and everything has become so strong. So, how could this principle work for Hagakure if we assume that she really is the traitor? The first thing that comes to mind is a quirk that makes her invisible. She tries to compensate her invisibility by being loud and active, as if being invisible bothers her, which is why she acts so hyperactive. Maybe she's not really evil at all, but just wants to be normal, which All For One may have promised her, taking away her quirk and maybe even removing her body's quirk factors with the help of Dr. Ujiko. If she just helps him with his plan, perhaps her desire to be normal was stronger than the thought of how much harm it could cause. But can we really say that Toru has been acting all along and all the friendships she has made are fake? I don't think so. We believe that all the friendships she made in Class 1A are real, considering that she became a villain for the same reason as all the other villains in the League of Villains. It must have something to do with a quirk and therefore being invisible. So if she came to the UA as a traitor because she didn't have any friends due to her quirk, then she must have struggled as a villain because in the hero class itself, she made friends even though she's invisible. It looks like no matter what reason she has for being a traitor, Hagakure won't find it easy to betray her classmates, which could eventually lead to the point where she switches sides and instead of pretending to be a hero, she tries to be a real hero. For this to happen, she first have to publicly reveal herself as a traitor, and then Class 1A will try to change her mind by telling her that they are all her friends and not accepting that she is evil, which could eventually lead her to changing her mind and joining the fight against All For One. So that's it for today, folks. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to smash the like button, and if you are new to our channel, make sure you subscribe with the notification bell turned on. See you guys in the next video. Yummy out.